We made it. And I'm still on cloud 9. Like, despite everything I've said about it being terrible, it was. About it being hard, it was. And about me being frustrated, which I also am. Like, I'm super happy to have finished. And, like, that is the camaraderie between the finishers having done that course is unlike anything I think most people in ultra running will ever experience. Like, if you go run any other race, almost anywhere else, you can at least ask someone about course beta, or you can at least see a Strava heat map. There wasn't even like mapped out trails here. There was like not a trail on the map or any heat maps. And so like,
and as they said at the very beginning, you were making history there, and making history at Puerto Vallarta 100 miler was really, really hard.
Yeah,
so,
I know.
Yay.
We earned it.
Yo. Hey, man.
Woo.
Hey, we made it.
We made it. Cheers, baby.
Cheers,
we
baby.
made it home from Mexico somehow. All the parents were worried.
Yeah, a healthy dose of luck involved.
Yeah, luck and sheer stubbornness on both of our parts.
Yeah, props to you for making it through the hardest ultra to have ever been on the trial.
Yeah, I really think there's nothing else like that out there. Like maybe Barkley, which Carson doesn't know what Barkley is. I
don't know what Barkley is.
It's like this crazy, I can't even describe it, basically all off trail, basically almost no one finishes.
Yeah.
But there's more info about Barkley and like people can go scout the course. So I think much more difficult than even that. Screw you, Laz. Just kidding. Laz is the race director.
Okay. Well, that was amazing. Neither of us have ever been to Mexico before. So that was a really cool experience. And I'd say we were both pretty amazed by a lot of different things. For one, I was really amazed by how friendly and inviting everyone was there. Like all the local people in Mexico seemed very friendly, and they were excited to kind of get to know me a little bit, get to know us, and see what we were doing. Like this is some crazy stuff that it doesn't seem like is very common out in Puerto Vallarta. So
yeah, it was nuts. And as much as I'm about to talk some smack about the course, that was an amazing thing about this race is like every person at the aid station, all the aid station volunteers, even though they had no clue what we were doing, were so friendly. I really got to practice my Spanish. Shout out Enrique, who fashioned me a walking stick when I was crawling down the hill backwards. Just that there's a UTMB, like it's obviously one of the most amazing races in the world and has a ton of prestige, but a lot of it is sterile, and by sterile, I mean, it feels like everybody's looking out for themselves, which you have to be. That's a long race too. But I've just never felt such a communal effort. And I feel like that's a reflection on the culture in Mexico. And both Carson and I, who are super social, loving people, felt so lucky to just be embraced by the people of Puerto Vallarta.
Yeah.
And
it did feel like a team effort just to survive this thing. And the fact that everyone was like giving you energy along the whole way, whether it be support like verbally or physically or, just knowledge about the place. It was amazing. So we'll get into it and we should talk about the whole thing. But first, leading up to it, what is it exactly that made you choose to go to Puerto Vallarta for this inaugural race, the first one ever held?
Yeah, so after my DNF at CCC, I, obviously I was really upset with myself. But, you know, I knew it was the right decision, and it was kind of like a flip that switched in me. Like if I hadn't been so preoccupied with work and everything else, like maybe I would have gotten my knee checked out before I left for CCC. Maybe I would have like taken in the inputs beforehand. That was like, you know, I did this long run a week before the race, and Carson came and met me at CCC, and I like literally could not walk.
CCC was about 2 months ago.
Yep, about 2 months before the race. And it was, I think, almost exactly. I think CCC was August 26th, and this was August 28th. And so, like, you know, I'm glad I started because it was a lesson in how my behavior needed to change. But, like, you know, a week before, I did a run and couldn't walk, and like Carson had to piggyback me all over Chamonix. And Carson's like, "Are you sure?" It's 5 days before the race, actually, and it's like scary. Yeah. So I've
been piggybacking you a lot lately, huh?
Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to how I can't walk now.
Yeah. Those crutches over there.
Yeah. So I really wanted to race. I got a cortisone shot in my knee, which took really well. You know, what happened was it turns out I'd ruptured that bursa in my knee. And I just was like, I smack my knee every year. It'll be fine. And then it wasn't. And, but, you know, was with treatment, which goes back to like, you know, that lesson of taking a step back instead of just trying to like bulldoze forward all the time.
And I mean, so since I'm sort of a newbie in this space, I'm just going to elaborate for everyone else who might also be. CCC is a 100-kilometer race in France that goes around Mont Blanc, the ultra running trail to Mont Blanc, and it's the most famous 100K in the world, right?
Yeah,
and it's got 22,000 feet of gain.
Yeah, about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's crazy. So if you ever go there, it's like in this town of Chamonix is where all the action is, and it's a full-on week-long festival of ultra running.
Yeah, and it's like the most competitive 100K in the country, without a doubt. So I talked to my coach, David Roach, and to Carson, and my agent and my sponsor, Brooks, and we were trying to figure out what race I could do. And we looked at, you know, originally I was looking at Ultra Trail Cape Town. What was the other one? There's also not Cape Town, Ultra Trail Australia is the one I was looking at. And I was not considering Ultra Trail Cape Town after looking into it because, you know, when I DNF'd CCC, I also realized that I was without a entry into UTMB in 2023, given the new system. And I like hadn't quite understood the system at the time. So you have to podium at one of the UTMB World Series races to get into UTMB or CCC or the other races. And it's just this whole new system.
And this is one of the last UTMB qualifier races of the year, right?
Yep, okay. Of 2022. And also, like, I really just felt I haven't raced all year. I did Broken Arrow 2 days after breaking my thumb, and honestly was not fit at all. So I just went in as a training race and survived it. And then had some like a rocky training cycle leading up to CCC. And I will say, like, I crushed this last training cycle leading up to Puerto Vallarta. But long answer to say that I chose Puerto Vallarta because I was chasing a UTMB ticket. You know, I'm trying to line up with the best, and UTMB is where that's at. And, you know, the travel to Cape Town is just so crazy that I just couldn't fathom going to Cape Town. And I was intrigued by running 100 miles again. You know, I realized I haven't done it since 2019.
Yeah. And so this race is 110 miles.
112, actually.
112.
Yeah.
Okay. Through the jungles of Mexico. And basically most of the information that was online about it was travel through the jungles of Mexico across farmlands in the jungles to the Pacific Ocean. That's pretty much all of the information. Besides, they had the GPS map, right?
Yeah, they had the GPX, which did change like 2 days before the race.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and, we were checking and, there's a group of us athletes that were trying to chase spots at either UTMB or CCC. And we were all talking to each other, trying to figure out what the course looked like. And, no one had any clue. I even reached out to someone that I know from Mexico that spent some time there, and he was like, yeah, I didn't even know there was trails there, which, by the way, there wasn't much.
Yeah. So we decided Mexico, and you decided that you wanted to do this race in Mexico, and I'm like, I love that idea. That sounds great. I've never been to Mexico.
Ocean.
Yeah, maybe there'll be surf there. So we went down there, and after a crazy work week, and we show up, and all of a sudden we're in Mexico. What were your thoughts when we first showed up in Puerto Vallarta?
Well, you and I were trashed because we'd had again, I'm learning, but we have this habit. I have this habit.
I do too. Procrastination.
And it's not just procrastination because we've been so busy. Like, through this training block, I'm running 20 hours a week and then working a few jobs and also trying to do PT, walk the dog, get body work. And so the day before we left, we were up till 11 p.m. trying to finish work. And, both Carson and I, and there's just it's not necessarily procrastination. It's
we just have a lot on our plates, right?
Yeah, it's just having too much on our plates. So we get to Puerto Vallarta, our flight leaves Denver at 7 a.m. and we get there, and both of us just feel terrible.
So we show up pretty drained, and
on Wednesday, 2 days before the race.
But we get the rental car, we show up at the hotel, which is baller, I gotta say. It's a really cool spot, and the cost of living in Mexico is much more affordable. So we come into this really cool hotel and with a beautiful view and in this really fun town of Puerto Vallarta. And we kind of get back to work and try to finish off checking off the list of required gear, making sure that everything is ready to go, and laying everything out in that hotel room. And while we were preparing, considering that we didn't really know what to prepare for other than that, we're going to be running through the mountains, I was putting the pins on the map of where exactly the crew stations were based on the names that they had on the website. But details of exactly where in this town the crew station was, there were none. So,
or any directions or what the roads look like, or...
So yeah, I was just kind of preparing for the unknown. And while we were doing this, what was the gear that you chose for this race? For the unknown.
So I had no idea what this course was going to look like, as we said. What I did know is that it was going to be hot. What I did know is it was a net downhill race, and that I was going to be running through the night, and quite a long night. It's
starting at 6 p.m., right?
Yep, starting at 6 p.m. So it's one of the longest nights of the year. And, I honestly thought this was going to be quite a different race. I thought the course was going to be different. The 2 days before the race, they released a promo video. I think it was literally called Puerto Vallarta course preview. And it was all dirt roads.
It looked very fun and relaxing.
It looked fun and fast. I thought it was going to be a really fast course. Turns out none of it was filmed on the actual course. So, but my thought was okay, fast downhill running. I talked to my coach, and even though the course is a bit longer than 100 miles, I had worked really hard, and I'm just a more mature athlete now. And so he and I thought on a perfect day that it depending on what the course looked like, there was a possibility that I could PR, which is crazy in retrospect, knowing what the course was like now. I ran 20 hours slower than my PR. Which is
36 hours of running, which is crazy. That's such a long time to be running.
Yeah, it was.
and even to stay awake for me, like it was a long time. And I had a couple of short naps, but you were running through it all, which was amazing.
Yeah, and running's a loose term. But anyway, back to the gear.
Back to the gear. What did you have for shoes?
So I wore the Caldera 6, which just came out, and I did, knowing Puerto Vallarta and knowing that it was going to be a downhill race, like I thought, foolishly Western States. And so I wanted something with quite a bit of cushion, but not a soft shoe. I wanted like a really responsive but cushioned shoe. And I'd been training a lot with the Caldera just because my training was so high volume. I did like the highest volume training I've ever done. And it worked really well. Like, I might have, knowing the course, gone with the Cascadia, a prototype Cascadia that I'm wearing just because it fits my foot a little bit better. I have a ton of black toenails, just because that Caldera, it's a little bit too big for me. But I will say that like the plush feeling of that firm yet really cushioned shoe, it's like springy. It felt good. And I had 2 pairs and I was changing them out every time I saw Carson, which again, like shows the nature of the course because I've never done that. I also wore, another really important piece of gear that I feel like people don't think about is my shorts. I wore the Method Tights 5-inch. I think that's what they're called. We'll link it in the show notes, but they just have like super deep pockets, and I call them sausage casings because they like really stick to your thighs. I like go a size down for my racing shorts just so they like really case my sausages, aka thighs, just so like to minimize movement and chafing. And then like the deep pockets, I can fit 10 gels in each pocket. And then I used my Garmin InReach just because who knows what the day was going to look like. And I used my Garmin Forerunner 955 solar. And that turned out to be key. I love this watch in training, but in racing, I ended up getting really lost in the course, just my own stupid fault. It was a technical section at night and I'm running like with my head like straight down, trying to see what and I'm doing that for a long time. And then I look at and I'm like, I haven't seen any people or any markers for a while. Literally it had been like 45 minutes and I look at my watch and I see that I'm way off course. And, that
was brutal. I saw you shortly after that and you were not happy.
Yeah. I was considering I'd done several extra miles. I feel like it probably seemed unhappy to you, but like, I was very much controlling my real feelings.
Yes. Okay.
I just told you that like I got lost and you were like, oh yeah, Genevieve said she passed you, but couldn't see where. And Genevieve is the woman that ended up winning. Yeah. And
I could just tell that you weren't stoked and
yeah,
you were having a really hard time.
Yeah. There. Well, it was already hard, from the beginning that day. That was around the 50K mark. But then I also, I designed a pair of sunglasses. I designed the Huntress and the Closer by Method 7, which I wore like a beta product at CCC in 2021 and loved it and decided to hop on board. And those were great, especially in the jungle. Like, unfortunately, I was mostly running at night. I had like over 20 hours, maybe like 25 hours a night running. But that's
12 hours of night time per night, right?
It was more. Hours. It was like 13 hours a night per night, or 13 hours of dark per night, because it was 11 hours of daytime. I looked it up the day before.
Okay.
And and like I ate maybe 1,000 spring energies too.
Yeah, 1,000 exactly. That's how many we packed. Yeah. So let's see. Oh, you had a pack also.
Oh yeah, I wore a pack. It's the Brooks branded pack, so it's a pretty good pack. I wore it for CCC too. I do have some feedback on the pack. It's made by Ultraspire, but I think overall it did the job really well. I didn't have any chafing. but it was just, I need some more pockets up front.
Yeah. So going into this, we drove a couple of hours out of Puerto Vallarta to, what's the name of the town where it all started?
San Sebastian, right?
I think so. It's hard for me to remember all the names.
That's the only one I remember.
So anyways, we show up in this little tiny town. It's a little farming village in the mountains of Mexico. Super far out there. Most of the way there, we were like, I don't see any other racing looking people around. So I hope that we're going the right way. I hope we're going up the right dirt road.
And in fashion, we left ourselves just enough time to get to the start and to check in. So like if we got lost, it would have been bad.
Yeah. But we got there perfectly fine and on ahead of time,
Yeah.
a little bit ahead of time. And then checked in, and here we are. And for me personally, like I'm seeing Cat embark on this adventure through the mountains of Mexico on these trails that no one has any beta on at all. And I have no idea where exactly she's going to be going throughout the night, the foreseeable 110 miles. And it was freaky because neither of us have ever been here before. And there's so many unknown risk factors. And so for me, as her crew and as her partner and as your partner and your fiance, like I'm worried for your safety. And I was like really just hoping and like praying that you're going to make it through this fine and safe and happy. And, I really have a ton of confidence in you because you're super strong and crazy and you do all sorts of crazy things and you make it out just fine. But when you entered the start line and then the shaman started doing the smoke ceremony for everyone, who's actually coming around blessing people during the smoke ceremony. He blessed almost every runner that was behind the start line, personally, like face to face. And that was very powerful because I felt like you had been granted access and given permission to embark on this journey.
Yeah. And both of us coming from Hawaii, like, although the blessings are different, we understand the weight of something like that, or we've been around it and feel, I don't know, I'm speaking for both of us, but for me, we just know what kind of impact and energy it is to be blessed by, a shaman or an elder or a kumu in Hawaii.
Yeah. So that was really special. And that was one thing that I'm really happy this race did, is because it was, the sense of place is very powerful. Like each place has a personality and it's alive really. And so being accepted into that place and going through that passage into this adventure was, I think it was pretty crucial, and it felt very powerful. And you said that you were drawing on that power throughout your race there.
Yeah, I had, kind of a very difficult day early on. And it was hard for me to stay in it. So when things got hard, I thought about that, and I thought about him granting me that safe passage and that, I could do it because of that. So I was drawing on that power from that experience, and also thinking about Carson, knowing what it would have meant to him too. And
also when you encountered some wildlife there.
Oh yeah, I saw like a puma, which a bunch of other people saw on the course. That was, I definitely burned some extra adrenaline calories when I saw that. Tons of scorpion.
Imagine.
Oh yeah, it was wild. It's really interesting though, because just nerd talk over here with heart rate variability, you can tell that I was already very stressed running this 100, my body was stressed being midway in this 100 miler. And because when I've seen a mountain lion here in Boulder, it's just like such a crazy spike. I can't get control of my heart rate. And my heart rate barely did anything. Like, even though I felt adrenaline, like my heart rate didn't move. So just, interesting, nerdy tidbit.
Maybe, I mean, there's so many other variables that could have gone into that, right? Like the stress that you were already under.
That's exactly it. With the, heart rate variability is a measure of stress. And so my heart rate variability was like tiny.
Or the blessing that you're given, you know?
It protected me from
your
fear.
heart rate will not spike too hard.
Yeah, you will not expel too much energy.
No, that probably wasn't it. But anyways, so you saw a puma, you said hundreds of thousands of spiders.
Yeah,
right?
like the
crazy spiders.
I was wearing a Petzl now, which it's my favorite headlamp because it's so freaking bright. And Carson has to change the battery every time I go out, every like 5-6 hours, every time I see him. And I would turn to a wall, and at first I didn't know what it was. It's like thousands at a time of just like little lights shining at you. It looks like little stars like on a wall. And then, as it took me hours to figure this out, that it's spiders, because when you look really closely at them, you can see all 8 eyes. But when you zoom out, it's hundreds of thousands of eyes.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really the craziest thing I've ever seen.
That's amazing. And scorpions too, right?
Oh yeah, and I saw scorpions.
Which if you get bit by a scorpion, that's not good.
Yeah, they said to call the emergency services immediately if you get bit by one of these.
And
quote,
there's no service the entire course.
So thank God.
Luckily, I was able to find like a snippet of 3G here and there, and in some of the towns there was service, so I could like Google gave
how to
me,
treat poison scorpions.
well, they gave me access, like directions to the next aid station, and Google is on it. They know about all those dirt roads. I was impressed, anyways.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So back to the start line. It's afternoon time. There's the blessing, and the UTMB starts are always epic. There's the full-on stage. There's this Mexican guy doing slacklining above the start.
We
like
run
above everyone. You look up, there's a guy slacklining.
Like no ropes or anything. He's like...
Very cool. Yeah, this is very cool.
Yeah.
And this little town is so beautiful, so well put together. And everyone there is super excited. There's nobody knows what to expect, really. And there's the epic UTMB music. It's always super epic when you get a UTMB race and you start on that start line.
Yeah.
My blood pressure is rising. I'm like, oh man, this is gonna be intense.
Yeah.
I hope I see her at the next aid station.
Meanwhile, I'm just like, what am I doing right now?
Yeah.
I was super excited. But I just had this like feeling that it was going to be a really long day. I knew don't know why, but I just had this sinking feeling that it was going to be a really long day, that I was going to do it no matter what. But geez, Louise.
Yeah. And you did it. Second place trophy right here, huh?
Yep.
Nux.
Thanks, honey.
Good job. So that first night, there's 7 total aid stations where I got to assist you at.
Yeah, not in the first night though.
No, in total, in the whole race. But the first night there was, I saw you at the first aid station probably around, was it like 10 p.m., like a few hours after the start? Yeah,
it was like, around 10 or 11. So the first bit, so this race total on the website says 21,000 feet. From everyone I've talked to, is more like 24,000 feet of gain, and about 30,000 feet of descent. We gained in the first 22 miles before I saw Carson. We gained like 7,000 feet. So a huge chunk of the climbing. And the first 22 miles was actually not that bad. It was still very technical, and very steep, difficult climbs. But it, just compared to what was coming, it wasn't that bad. Just like very, very rutted out roads, cobblestone. And there was still some like really steep, terrible single track too. That just, by single track, I that's like a loose term for no trail, in this race.
Yeah,
and
some of these photos are pretty wild.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll try to splice them into this video so you can see some of the photos that Cat took. She took 3 photos total on this.
Yeah.
On this run, I think.
And it was just like, and the photos don't even do it justice. Like, but the first 22 miles, 7,000 feet, I did in like 5 hours. I led for a little bit, and then this really strong Colombian woman. And I was feeling pretty good. I was feeling great running uphill. But downhill, I was having some SI symptoms and my hip was hurting. And so I was just like taking it easy, and I just let this woman go. This Colombian woman who was just crushing the downhills. But I was wondering what was going to happen, because it seemed she ran for Hoka. She was decked out in Hoka, so I knew she was strong. And again, like, running these like extremely technical downhills very quickly. And I was moving pretty well on them at first too. And, so I just let her go, and I rolled into the aid station, told Carson that I was having some SI symptoms, but that it was going to be a rough day, but I could just, that I knew I could do it. I just had to stay consistent.
So getting to this aid station, was pretty wild. It's like mostly dirt roads. Once you get off the highway, it's dirt roads, like maybe all-wheel drive. I was in a little, Chevy station wagon, 2-wheel drive. So it was pretty wild getting there, actually. And it felt like an adventure just finding the aid station. And so when Cat rolls through at night and you say that you're having some SI issues, then I was like, ooh, I hope that turns around for you. Because sometimes it does, right?
Yeah, sometimes it does. And in this case it did, but it took a long time. That next section before I saw you, where was that? Did I see you next?
Oh, is that when you got lost? Right after that?
I got lost right after that. So I got lost around mile 26. I went and I just like kept running. There was like this nicer path, and I was just running at it, and I was like trying to open up a little bit, and it was still very technical, but it was one of the first like flat sections, and I could really take advantage of those, especially because on the flats I had like no SI symptoms. It was just on the downs especially. And then so I started to open up a little bit, and it was quite technical, so I was just staring at the ground, and I just ran almost 3 miles in the wrong direction downhill. And wow. And then, again, I realized that I was just like, it was early in the race, and I was trying to be chill, and I'm a nerd, so I was listening to a fantasy audiobook, and which was super cool, running in that crazy jungle and listening to that. But then, obviously I got a little distracted and tumbled down the wrong direction. So then I climbed back up, I thought I could, I got most of the way back, and it looked like I could bushwhack up, and cut onto the course, but I tried to bushwhack up, spent about probably 20 minutes, like literally it was so steep. I was like on this tree, and I'd like push myself off one tree and grab another one, pull myself up. So I tried to do that to get back on course, to cut just a tiny bit of mileage off, and then it just turned out to be impossible. So I booked it back down, ran around, and got back on course. And by that time, so in that section right after that, I passed like 3 women, putting me in 4th by the next time I saw Carson. So I got back there by getting lost. Wow. When I got lost.
But that's amazing that you're able to bring it back from that.
Thanks. I mean, I was having, it didn't happen in that section.
It's a long race too. So this is the first quarter,
50K. Yeah.
The first quarter of the whole race that all of this is happening. And that can affect your psyche, right? When it's these negative things happen in the first quarter of the race, but there's still so much to go. So it's untold what will happen.
Something was weird at the beginning. I think just because I was focused on like managing my SI pain and my back pain, and just feeling already a little defeated that it was back. I'd had like a great training block with no SI pain, and about 2 weeks before the race, it started flaring up again. And I was doing my best to try and manage it, but just with the travel and the work, I wasn't able to fully get it back to normal before. And so it goes. So I got back on course, and I had, then that was that section between like getting back on course and seeing Carson again, which is around mile 40. And I like can't even remember that aid station.
Oh, right. That was Navidad. And that one you ripped through. You seemed like you were doing pretty well, but it did take you a lot longer to get there than I expected.
Yeah. Well, I ended up, and part of this was, I'm sure, mental. Part of this was like my SI pain there was this really terrible technical descent that was super loose and rocky, and my SI pain was that was the worst of my SI joint pain, and it was so bad. So I walked a lot of that. Even there was this nice road downhill that was maybe about quarter mile that I could have taken advantage of, and I walked that too. And that sucked. I'd just gotten lost, and like that pain had gotten way worse. And sometimes it doesn't do this, but this time it did, where it also was manifesting in like my hip flexors and psoas. So like my psoas, whenever I like picked up my foot on these rocks, was just like, it was just like there's worse pain in the world, but like when every step hurts like that, it's like really, really bad. So I was just, I think kind of down, and was down to do whatever it took to finish. But, I was, sad and where I was at. I think.
So early in that sort of race to be feeling that way.
I know. And I was trying not to think about it.
Such a long time to have to go through that sort of pain.
Yeah. And I know better than to be like, I have to do this for, 100 more miles at mile 20, but, it's hard not to. And so like that, like, I felt very defeated. But things, then I saw you at mile 40, and you had, what happened around there for you?
Was that the nighttime one, Navidad? The second aid station? Mm-hmm. It was each 30 minutes that passes by when it gets into the zone where Cat could be coming through. I really didn't have any way of tracking her. The Garmin was, I wasn't able to connect to the web page for some reason, which we need to dial that in for next time, because that's crucial. Yeah. Just thinking back, like I need to, as your partner in this, like I need to be able to figure out where you are if anything went wrong, Yeah. But all that aside, it's nerve-wracking when I think you might show up in this 30-minute range, and then it's an hour and a half later. But there's so many other reasons why that could be, like poor terrain, if you go off course, or say that you do get hurt, or you end up walking for a while. Yeah. And in that case, I ended up walking and getting lost. So it took extra long. And that actually wasn't the time that I saw that you were having a really hard time emotionally. The time that I was mentioning was the next morning. Yeah. At, after the third aid station. Mm-hmm. So you came into that one shortly after the 100-kilometer. Yeah. So another 20 miles till I saw Carson. I think that section was like on paper, it said it was like 14 miles, but I think it turned out to be like 18. And this is when like the terrain got, even dicier. Just these descents were like a little bit skewed for me because my back was just hurting. And to be quite honest, like my back had started to feel a little bit better at this point. But not by much. And it sucked. And I was just, I was just trying to make it through. And that's the time where I was like, I got lost. It's the 100K aid station, but I'm already at mile 68. I'm going to find the name of these aid stations just so that we can shout them out. Yeah, good job. Because that's crucial, right, for everyone to know. But that wasn't the one that there was one before that. So we'll just move on to that. Yeah, so the first aid station I saw you at night is Sierra Lago, and that is kilometer 37. And then Navidad, the second aid station that we just discussed, the one between Sierra Lago and Navidad, you got lost and went off trail. Yep. And then the next aid station, the one that all the 100K racers were starting at that morning, is called Mascota.
And I felt okay at that aid station too.
Yeah. You came through that one and I was like, wow, this chick is badass and very hot. So
meanwhile, I'm like publicly lubricating my butt crack.
Yeah. I don't know what that does, but it does something for me. I tell you what. Anyways, too much information, huh? Anyways, so in Mascota, it's like a big spot, and this is where a big building where you come in. It's probably the biggest town with the biggest aid station of the whole race.
Yeah.
And there's people sleeping in there on cots and sort of getting ready to continue on their journey. And up until this point, like, it sounds like it was like hell almost for a lot of people because it's so hard to stay on trail. The terrain was way more difficult than anyone thought it would be. It's scary out there.
Yeah.
It's a challenge.
Yeah. I totally, if he'd asked, would have agreed with all of that he'd heard before. We were all suffering. But again, I was just still in this like grinding mindset. I think I was like, it's still, we'd gone through a whole night, but it's still early on in the race. And I'm just trying to stay positive, and I'm having a hard time, but, trying to show face for Carson too and eat a lot of food. I know I'm eating really well. I'm not puking, which, has always been a problem. I know I'm moving really slowly. But, we're about halfway at this point, and I'm hoping that the course gets better. I'm like, on paper, the course looked like it got a lot easier from there.
Yeah. So you carry on and you're in and out of that one pretty quickly. And at this point, I think you're in third or fourth.
No, I'm in fourth still.
You're fourth.
Yeah.
Still. Okay. And then from this one to the next one that I'm going to see you at, it's like, what was it supposed? It was supposed to be 20 something miles where between this one and the next cruise station.
Yep.
But I went to the next station that she was able to just run through because it was on the way and I got to cheer her on a little bit. And that was the moment where you were having a hard time.
Yeah.
You're having a very hard time there.
Yeah. So, it had been 18 hours at that point, and I was, 68 miles in. 6 of those were extra miles.
So like maybe more than halfway for you at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe more than halfway. It turned out to be more than halfway, but I was like, we'd just gone down this super steep descent and I had to walk the whole thing. And I was like, how am I going to do this? I was like, I'm in fourth right now. I'm not even in the running. There's still so much of the race to go, but it feels like the race was almost over. The sun came up. I was tired. I was hurting. I was disheveled. I felt like I'd lived a lifetime. And I really felt like the race was almost over, both physically and mentally. Like my body felt like it was close to its breaking point. And then I was in fourth and I was like out of the UTMB spot and I was ashamed. I'm sent there as a professional athlete. The race asked me to come and be on the elite panel. And, I have, and just like that wouldn't have been so hard on any other day, but I've just had such a hard few years in running, just like impossibly hard. With back flare-ups, with like major personal life stress, with, just wondering if I loved it still. And that like all came crashing down at that point, where I was in fourth and, I felt terrible and I was walking down every descent. It turns out so is everyone. So is, even the guy who won told me that he was sprinting up every uphill just so he could like down climb slowly every downhill because they were that steep and technical and terrible. But
some you were saying 80% grade on the descent, which is like, basically you're like you're like falling, you're like jumping from like ledge to ledge or tree to tree.
Yeah.
And we have experience doing that in Hawaii a little bit when we were growing up, you know, like exploring in the forest there. It's really steep, and you're basically using the vegetation in order to actually have any holding on the ground itself. Yeah. But like this is...
you can't jump when your legs are shot, you know, almost 70 miles in for me. And so what I was doing is I was like truss falling onto a tree and then like slowly stepping down and then slowly truss falling onto another tree and then stepping down. So like, as you can imagine, I'm doing like 40-minute miles downhill. You know, and the uphills aren't any better. Like there's some really steep uphills that take, well, you know, all like 4 points of contact, you know, and poles would have been really smart in retrospect. However, I have not been able to train with poles. My thumb injury, you know, it's so stupid. It's like a thumb injury, but I dislocated the top of my thumb, and that's been like chronically dislocating. So squeezing things, even a pole sometimes, like the thumb could dislocate. Yeah. And in a race this long, like that was just too much of a risk. And it's done it like a bunch of times.
Yeah. Be careful for van doors out there, children. They're really dangerous.
Yeah. Don't slam your thumb in a door. It'll fuck up your next 100-mile race. But anyway.
Oh man. So you left Mascota, the big one that we already talked about. And then this intermediate station was, I'm going to probably butcher this name, but Tekuani.
Cool.
And that was at kilometer 100.
Yeah.
And then the one after that, where I was able to find you, was San Jose del Mosco.
So from when I saw you at around 100K, again, around mile 68 for me, it's like this long dirt road section that's rolling. Like the dirt road section, you gain about like 2,000 feet in like 12 miles, but it's gentle and it's super runnable. So I was stoked.
The 10 miles of trail, or the 10 runnable miles.
10 runnable miles. And then I left that aid station after that, and there you climb a little bit, but it was great. And, you know, although I was really hurting, you know, some of that there's some downhill in that too. And it was hurting my back, but I was just like so grateful to be moving faster. I was like, and again, like my effort was so low that, and I'm do really well in the heat. So I didn't even feel the heat. I didn't even notice it.
Yeah. You are a lizard. You handle the heat very well. It's pretty cool. I think it's one of your superpowers, actually.
Yeah. I think it's a strength.
So, yeah, it was really cool. I was stoked to see Cat in good spirits again, because I was kind of worried at the last one, like, oh man, just saw her run by and she is having a tough time out there. And now this one, boom.
Still tough.
Semi high spirits now compared to where she was. And then river crossing, you decided to take your shoes off for the river crossing, which
was a total mistake.
Turned out to.
So I saw him at this aid station right before the river crossing, and then next time I was going to see him was 23 miles later, which was the longest section. Without, you know, the other one was 22, so it was like marginally longer, but still. I don't know what's coming. We're on dirt road. I'm moving really well, and I'm having a ton of feet problems. So I decided to take off my shoes. I think the feet problems is skin. You know, our feet have been wet for a lot of the day. Just it's the nature of the trail, even though there hadn't been a whole lot of river crossings before this point. So I decided to take out my shoes. Turns out my foot issue didn't turn out to be skin. It's something that like I'm still trying to figure out what it is. But stepping on the riverbed and those rocks like almost set me over.
could be nerve, could be bone. Something's up, and you're swearing profusely crossing this river. Like, shit, I should have put on my shoe. Which was a total mistake. Yeah. And I'm like, go, babe, you got this. I'm still rooting for you. Like,
by the way, this is his first 100-miler he's ever crewed. So like, you know, the swearing profusely is like pretty typical for like me and all runners. But
I did my first 100K this year, and I was swearing profusely also. So I mean, I kind of get it, you know.
It's true.
I'm on my way there, but it was intense crewing this 100-miler, which it just was. it was wild. It was wild to get there. This was another one of those gnarly 4-wheel drive road scenarios where I was actually like doing a river crossing with this little Chevy. And then at this, when I see her leave, I go and ask one of the race officials how to get to the next station. There's no service at this point. And, but I thought I was supposed to go the same direction. And he was like, no, you're actually going to have to go around, like go back down, go back around through Puerto Vallarta to get to the other side because, this river is probably not crossable for you.
Yeah.
The rest of the road is way more gnarly and there might be some like less than friendly landowners. So I'm like, oh man, okay, I'm gonna drive all the way back around then, and I hope that I can make it there on time. And this is about a 22-mile section, right?
It's 23.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 23 miles, which like these miles are 40-minute miles. So
yeah, a long time.
A really long section. So I leave that aid station after I like put my shoe back on. It's more dirt road for a few miles. It's like about the first 4 miles leaving that. It's all uphill and at a pretty steep grade. But I'm running most of it and I'm like feeling better about myself. I'm passing people. People are really struggling in the heat. That's where I pass 4th place. I'm in 3rd. And I'm just like jogging up this hill, like jogging. I'm like trying to get myself hyped. So I'm like I'm like pointing at some shade and I'm like, okay, I can walk in this like 5-foot section of shade and then the rest I'll run. Just, letting myself drink in the shade. And at this point I like realize, I look at my watch and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going, the first hour ticks by and I run 4.5 miles and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going 4.5 miles an hour. Like that's faster than I've gone this whole time. And like, if this is the case, I'm going to see Carson in like 5 hours and I'm going to, finish in like 10 hours. And I'm like getting stoked. And then I turn the corner and it's like, this is like at 4.5 miles and I literally turn the corner and we start bushwhacking up this steep ass hill. And I'm staying positive. And I'm hiking really, really well, actually. And it's brutal terrain and I'm just eating well and hiking well. This is probably my best section. It sucks. The terrain is just as bad as everywhere else. But I think like getting that 4 miles in an hour under me was just, good for confidence after moving so slowly for so long. And, yeah, I was stoked. So I get to this section. I'm not sure how long it is. It's still slow. So around this time, like the 12 miles total starting from when I left Carson to this one spot, I noticed I'm like, oh wow, 12 miles still took me 4 hours. Like in the first 4 I got done in an hour. Mm-hmm. So like I really slowed down, after I turned that bushwhacking corner just because the terrain again was like so brutal. Literally everyone I talked to in the 100-mile race, no one was running the downhills, in this section. It was so gnarly. And then, so I'm running and then I get down in about like mile, I don't know, like 17 miles from seeing Carson. Maybe it was less, but anyway, around that time I get into an aid station and Genevieve, first place, is there. And leaving the river, I was 2 hours behind her. So I was like shocked and I ended up passing, the Colombian woman and, just charging and, getting, even with a ton of walking, even with me thinking I'm moving slow, I see Genevieve into the aid station. She's looking rough. So I try and get in and out as quickly as possible. And she leaves with me. She's, super competitive. So she leaves with me. We chit chat for a long time and I'm just so stoked that she is, I'd been running by myself all day and like, I was, really wanting to push. I was like pushing it a little bit to try and drop her. And sometimes I would. But the terrain was so technical. It was like from this section to when I saw Carson, which was around mile 90. It was like everyone walked at like every step of that, or hiked and ran tiny, like 5-foot sections there's about 200 river crossings.
Yeah.
And then, you know, she and I were just talking about how surprised we were about this course. And I was just so relieved that, you know, Genevieve is a really strong athlete. She's won Leadville before. She's, you know, solid. And so I was comforted that, you know, she was struggling as much as I was, and that I'd also caught up to her with adding like 2 hours to the course. So
you spent a long time on that section, and after I made it all the way around and back to I got to the aid station where I was able to crew you at, and I was waiting for you. I was trying to calculate when you might be able to show up. And when you didn't show up within that hour or the next hour or the hour after that, that's when I started to like be a little concerned. Did she make it through here already? The man who was working at the aid station said that the top 200-mile females made it through already. And I gave him your number, like your bib number, and he said, no, number 5 hasn't come through yet, but the top 200 females has. And then I was able to borrow a little bit of Wi-Fi from this restaurant that was there, and I get the information that Cat is in second place. And so I think, oh God, she must have passed through here already if the first 200 females went through already, because I don't see her. So I get in my car. It's nighttime by now. I race to the next aid station to see, has Cat passed through here already? And they say, well, we don't know. And so that's when my gut drops, and I think, oh man, what if she is at the next aid station already, and I'm not there to help her? So I race back there. I drive this car like a bat out of hell, like running through this 4-wheel drive dirt road around corners. And it's like, by this time it's like midnight. So I get there and I ask the race official that's there, have you seen Cat? Where do you think she is? Like, do you think everything's okay? It's been 9 hours for this 22-mile section. And then you show up.
Right then.
And
so I'd been running with Genevieve that whole section, but what I think we're still a little bit further away than we were, but right before I run into the aid station, we're running together, we're chit-chatting, and then right before something happens to my foot, and it went from like being a dull aching pain to like, oh my God, I have to look at this thing right now. And then I run maybe on that for like another few minutes before I just can't, and I take off my shoe.
Yeah. And so we, you know.
So then I dropped, I dropped, then Genevieve's is like, okay, I'll see you at the aid station. You'll catch up to me. And then I get there. It takes me a long time to figure out this shoe thing because I'm like, is there a rock in my shoe? And then I run into the aid station. Maybe it took me like 10 minutes sitting on the trail to do that, running into the aid station. And Genevieve obviously just dropped me. So she is in and out.
This is before the aid station.
This is right before the aid station.
Yeah.
Like literally I turned the corner, I could see it. If I just gone just a little bit, I didn't know how far we were. And so if I'd just gone like a little bit further, I would have gone into the aid station with her, but I sat in the trail and addressed my foot.
So brutal.
So brutal. It was like killing me at the end of the race when I was thinking about that whole interaction. But anyway, I get to Carson. I'm like, something's really wrong with my foot. I have to address it. And so I look, and there's not like anything that looks really wrong with it. So, you know, we eat food. I actually don't eat enough at that aid station because I'm like trying to figure out my foot.
Yeah, crewing these things is crazy because it's like, okay, we got to get lube on you. We need to change your shoes. We need to change out your headlamp batteries. We have to feed you. We got to make you eat as much as possible. Change out your water and electrolytes. We need to take out the trash from your pack.
Yeah.
I got to like assess you to see if you're okay. I got to give you more gels and make sure that everything is good. And are you warm enough? Are you like, you know, how are you feeling? And so there's so many things, and you're trying to get in and out of this aid station in a few minutes, or maybe.
I'm trying to like leave just like 2 minutes after Genevieve, but with my foot. And also on that section, there's tons of river crossings that were like up to the waist. Like when like 12 or 15 is not an exaggeration. So I had to change my shoes, and I was chafing worse than I've ever chafed in a race before. And so I had to lube up too, and that took a little time. And then so I ended up not eating enough leaving the aid station, which turned out to not be a huge deal. Just because I couldn't run that well after that. I was trying my best, and but like my foot was like screaming at me every single step. And then from compensating, then my opposite knee started to really hurt. So I ended up just like, crawling down every descent. And at the time I was positive and I knew I was going to finish, but I was down. Like I'd caught Genevieve, I got lost and I worked really hard to catch her, and it was my body that failed. But like, I still, somehow felt better and more positive than I did at the beginning of the race. But it was a really difficult, like, reality to accept that, like, okay, this is my current max effort. This is as fast as I can currently go.
Yeah. It was incredible to see you come in there and, having been through so much, you have blood on you, you're muddy, you're like so drained. You've been going for over 24 hours at this point. You've been going for like 30 hours almost.
Yeah, it's like 30 hours, I think, at that point.
And it's the fact that you're able to still keep on that track and focus on getting out of there and continuing on is, well, partially because you're super competitive and also you have like a incredible drive that you have to
Thanks.
hunt after that.
It was, it's a blessing and a curse because like I felt like when I felt like my body was failing me, I again like felt like a failure, and I was like, and now I'm like kind of at peace with it, and I did what I could on the day and with what I was working with, and you always have to be proud of that. And it's just, more cues like, okay, what can I work on so this doesn't happen next time? And, with my complicated back injury that, I finally have found a team that seems to be really helping. It feels like we're just, going in the right direction, but it's just like those old hints of like, well, fuck, I, have done everything I could. And again, it's my body that is my limiting factor, and not just like my fitness, I never felt like my fitness was tested once in this race. It's, the structural integrity of my meat sack, and that is just a super hard reality when, I felt otherwise capable of winning. But, that's ultra running, like bodies fail. And mine does. I know this about myself, like my body and its ability to withstand the distance is, my biggest limiting factor. And so I'm just gonna, it's another data point to just work on because I don't ever want to be in that position again.
Yeah. I don't want you to either. That's why I've been like madly researching stem cells and like all these other sorts of, remedies for you. And we need to figure out what's going on with your foot. But
yeah, my foot is like a symptom of the larger issue. So like for those of you who don't know, some might, I have a 40% torn labrum in my left hip. It's a posterior tear. And I've been told like, you have to get surgery or you can fix it with PT. And like, I've been trying, PT is helping so much that I'm helpful. Or I'm hopeful. But it's not, and again, this is all just like symptoms of, my car accident, when I broke my pelvis. It's really frustrating and really, when everything can be pointed back to that, and like every MRI I get, they're like, oh wow, you had some major trauma.
But we're going to fix it. And if anyone out there has any really solid information about labral repairs that might not involve surgery right off the bat, then reach out, please. We're researching.
We're researching, and I obviously have the best partner in the whole world to be helping me go through this. But anyway,
back to the race. So you hunt out of there, and I see Cat frothing at the mouth, like, I need to catch her. Like, I need to get back up there. And you hunt out of there. And how did it go between that station and the next one?
That station was okay. It was about half dirt road, half trail, which, like, again, it was a 6 mile section. So
that one is Uma aid station.
Yeah. So, the trail section was, as it had been all day, like extremely technical, extremely steep, hard to navigate, lots of bushwhacking. But then the road section, I was running as best I could. My knee had not flared up yet. It was just like, and I've gotten pretty good at managing pain. So like the foot pain, I was just like almost making a beat out of it because it was my left foot. So like every time that I'd step and that it would flare up, I'd like make a song to the pain like beat, because when you're like that type of pain, it almost is like a sound. It almost has a sound,
Wow.
So
like a heavy bass, or what kind of sound?
Yeah, it's a deep, heavy bass. It's like
you got some subwoofers.
Rattles. Yeah. It's
wow, that's crazy. So was it like a sort of Matty A style beat?
Yeah, shout out Matty A. He's the guy who did all the beats for this podcast. And
Matty A.
Kind of like that, but like deep and morbid.
Yeah, a much more sad version of some Matty A beats.
But I was moving, so it wasn't that sad. It was more just like dark energy.
I see.
But then I got to that other aid station, and it's a second to last aid station, and it's 6 miles of extreme downhill.
Yeah.
Extremely steep downhill, like crazy. And I get to start going down it, and about a quarter of a mile the way down, I'm babying my foot, and then I take a step, and then my knee, my opposite knee just like goes out. And then I'm like, that's when I start to feel sorry for myself, which, again, I don't feel that way anymore. It's just like a data point of what I have to work on. Yeah. It was really devastating. And that section is where I lost all my time. I can't imagine on that first section that Genevieve got too far ahead of me. But those 6 miles downhill, walked every step. And walking is generous. Again, like some really slow miles, 40-minute miles. And it took me 2.5 hours. At the end of that race, I'm like at mile 112, and just to be going that slowly and to be so limited, was, sad.
Yeah. So, you kind of talked about like how you came through the last couple of aid stations, and that last downhill part was slow and hard. And
yeah, well, the last 20K was all downhill, but the first 6 mile section of that, the first like 12K section was on single track, and that was really bad. Single track, my knee didn't hurt that bad. It was just, when it was these 80% grades, or if it was technical, it was like, seemed like a stabilizer.
Yeah. And it was cool those last 3 aid stations were pretty close together, and I could visit you at all 3 of those and help you. So that was nice. And
shout out to Enrique, who saw me limping down the hill and made me a walking stick and stayed with me the whole time. He was like so worried about me because I was crawling backwards. I was literally turning around and crawling backwards down the hill. Would pop up to see what I had next, and then would turn back around and crawl down the next section. And there was like ticks everywhere. So I was like, terrified. But anyway, more scared of ticks than I am of scorpions.
Yeah, ticks are gross. But anyways, so you come through that last aid station. It's rough out there. I'm sitting at this last aid station for about 2-3 hours at night, just helping the race officials clean up, help runners survive and keep on going. And I'm waiting for Cat, and it's carnage. It almost reminds me, there's like this one scene in that old animated movie Ants where they like go to war. It's like just carnage in the battlefield afterwards. It was like that. So anyways, you come through, you make it, you're in second place, and you are determined and you're focused, and it sucks.
Yeah.
But you're close.
But I'm close, and I'm terrified that third place is going to catch me. Because at that section, you know, you heard him. He was waiting for that at that aid station for like 2-3 hours. And that was 6 miles took me that long. And so I, you know, so like, I forget my point other than, you know, dang, that sucked so bad.
Reiterating how hard all of this was.
Yeah,
so.
I just like am blown away still.
Considering all this stuff that you had to go through and the actual terrain of the race, you went pretty fast, in my opinion. Like that is incredibly fast for you to do that many miles with all of that vert and all that stuff, and also finish it in 36 hours and 40 minutes. Like that, considering that you're doing 40-minute miles, and a lot of those is just impressive to me. So
thanks. I, you know, am really excited to actually run at my next 100.
Yeah, you're an ultra runner, not an ultra crawler.
Yeah, I'm like, you know, I'm so happy with the finish, and I'm honestly like, so I'm on cloud 9. But yeah,
the finish, you come in.
I come in and like my foot
into the town. Tell them about the gay district. Running through the gay district. There's this part of Puerto Vallarta that's the gay district. That's and that's actually what they call it. And it's basically it's a part of the town that has lots of like gay clubs, and there's it's a Saturday night, so there's
people are raging.
It's late Saturday night. So
Saturday morning. We're shutting down the gay district.
Dudes walking around in thongs everywhere.
Yeah, and that's what I'm running through, and it's like really actually pretty cool because everyone does not know or care about what I am doing, and I've just gone to hell and back, and I'm so close to finishing. I see Carson. I'm like, go park. I'm a mile away. And then like they actually turn us around and make us run like more stupid single track through town. Yeah. We're like, I can see the finish line, and then they take us and add like another 2.5 mile section around town. I'm like, oh God, where I take 2 wrong turns. And, you know, but at this point I'm like just surviving and don't really care. You know, I'm past the point, you know, sometimes in these ultras, I'm like, the finish line will never be there. This is purgatory. And I think at this point I've been like, this actually might be purgatory, and I might be better just accepting it. You know, I thought it might never end. And,
I'm
you know,
in purgatory.
I was past the point of like fighting it.
Smart.
But yeah, so I run through town. I'm like, you know, I can't like overstate what my foot is just throbbing in my shoe. And then, you know, I see Carson and I'm like, oh, thank God. And for the last like 8 hours, all I've been able to think about is lying down. You know, I was up and running for 3 calendar days. Like I hit 3 different calendar days.
Yeah. Ending at like 5 a.m. on Sunday. And man, I was so blown away. It was such a journey for me too. Like I didn't expect it to be this grueling for me as just support, but like I knew it would be. I was tearing up when I saw you. I was so happy that you're alive and safe, and like you made it through this entire insane journey. That's how I can describe it, is insane.
Well, we made it, like, as we talked about right after, like, you know, could not have been more of a team effort, and you had an ultra of your own. And right before the race started, I was like, crewing might be harder than running it. And it might have been like, you know, I just can't even imagine. I mean, I don't know, man.
Yeah, it was definitely harder.
I can't walk still.
Don't worry.
But
yeah, I can walk. So the crewing doesn't end at the race. You know, carrying the luggage, like piggyback ride down the steps to the beach the next day, where the ocean kind of healed you for a while.
Well, here's the thing: is I've never been bedridden after UTMB. I was up and walking around the next day. I just like been to the hospital and I was fine. You know, after all my races, I've been fine the next day. And this one, I was bedridden. Like if I was standing up, all I could think about was getting horizontal just because my foot was throbbing so much. And
she was totaled.
I was told, so Carson had to carry me everywhere, like literally to the toilet.
It was fun. But,
and today it's feeling much better. So
yeah, and you're looking good. You're looking cheery, and you know, after that finish, we were both on cloud 9 for a full day because, man, we made it.
We made it. And I'm still on cloud 9. Like, despite everything I've said about it being terrible, it was. About it being hard, it was. And about me being frustrated, which I also am. Like, I'm super happy to have finished. And, like, that is the camaraderie between the finishers having done that course is unlike anything I think most people in ultra running will ever experience. Like if you go run any other race, almost anywhere else, you can at least ask someone about course beta, or you can at least see a Strava heat map. There wasn't even like mapped out trails here. There was like not a trail on the map or any heat maps. And so like,
and as they said at the very beginning, you were making history there, and making history at Puerto Vallarta 100 miler was really, really hard. So,
I know.
Yay.
We earned it.
Cheers, honey.
Cheers, baby.
Amazing job.
Thank you.
Holy smokes.
Well, I honestly could not have done it without you. I was so happy to see you every time I did.
I was happy to see you too.
Next time, it won't take as long, I promise.
Next time, we're going to have all the GPS stuff figured out. I'm going to be tracking you with my like off-grid device, and
perfect.
Maybe we'll get a 4-wheel drive car.
Yeah.
You know, all the goods, but
I'm honestly just leaving this like so excited to race more. You know, I was like seriously considering stopping in the last couple years, just like, you know, when the personal life stuff like takes a hold of you, you know, you kind of forget who you are and what you like to do. And I was there. And that among other reasons. And so I just like every time I race, I'm reminded about how much I love it. And you know, even though it's super difficult, you know, I really want to race and get back at it. So hopefully this foot thing is just like, you know, hopefully I'm just being a little baby. Like, who knows? Maybe I'm just being a drama queen.
I don't think you're being a little baby. No, did you hear yourself just now? That whole story about what you just went through? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but maybe I am, and it'll be better by the time I
you'll
wake
be better
up tomorrow.
in like 2 or 3 days. Yeah, for sure.
By the time the snow goes away.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, with that, I got to just say, amazing job. I'm proud to be on this team with you, Kat.
I'm proud to be on this team with you, honey. You're the best. Well, thanks you guys for listening. Peace and love.
Yeah. Appreciate you all. Aloha.